let's talk about how to start. Hi, my name is Mitch Goldstein, and I have a problem. So sometimes you get into the studio, you get in front of your laptop, you get ready to work, and it kind of just happens, right? And it just flows and it just goes. But what about when it doesn't? What about when you really want to make work and it just seems like you can't get motivated, you can't get moving, you can't seem to start, you find it impossible to sort of make things, nothing is happening, you just sit there frustrated, staring at your computer, staring at your canvas, staring at your workbench, and you just kind of can't do anything. I actually have this problem a lot. I have this problem constantly. I would like to say that I'm a horrible procrastinator, but it might actually be something more like ADHD. We are in the process of figuring that out for myself. I will report back. But it's a really difficult problem for me. And I honestly am not quite sure how to solve it, but I have been dealing with it pretty much my entire creative career. And so I wanted to talk to you all about maybe ways to kind of combat this, ways to sort of move forward with it. The idea of like Nike's just do it, sometimes that just doesn't work for me as much as I want to just beat myself up into making stuff sometimes. It's just really difficult. I have a really, really big problem with this. And so I thought it was worth making a video to try to talk about some stuff that sometimes works for me, sometimes it doesn't, maybe it'll work for you. But I've always found that like inertia and getting going is my biggest problem. Finishing is actually no problem. I'm really quite good at knowing when something is done and just moving on. But getting going is a real nightmare for me. So hopefully this video will help everybody, including myself. I think this video is as much for me as it is for you. Just to kind of implement some strategies. I have some actionable ideas that hopefully should help. And I thought we could all kind of figure this out together. So I'm going to start by showing you the scariest thing in the world. Now, if you have any young kids who are watching this video, you might want to have them leave the room for just a second. Okay, we in the clear, we're good. Okay, sit back and hold on. I'm going to show you the scariest thing in the world right now. Yeah, this scares the absolute shit out of me. The blank page, the empty canvas, the clear workbench. It frightens me. And I'm being funny, but I'm actually not being that funny. This really does scare me. I have a real hard time getting over this sort of empty void of possibility. So in this video, I'm going to try to give you what I hope are some actionable sort of ideas to kind of move forward from this. And really, like I said, this blank page freaks me out. So ultimately, like to start, how can you eliminate the blank page? I think that's really the first strategy, is to never start with a blank page. Instead of starting with this emptiness where anything goes, don't start with emptiness. You can start with something. Now, we all have heard this term inspiration, which I will air quote a lot. And I will definitely make another video about this at some point. But inspiration, I don't really buy the idea that like you have an assignment to do like a logo for, you know, an athletic wear company. So you go look at athletic wear logos. That's not inspiration to me. That's just reference. So having said that, I do think having some sort of stimulus to get moving can actually be really, really useful. So I think the first way you can do this is you can start with a library of ideas. If you guys remember in my previous video, which I will link over here, I talked about how a sketchbook is sort of a library of ideas that you can go back to. That's a really great way to start. Pick up sketchbooks. Even old sketchbooks can be really great. You can start with a previous project. Even if it seems like it's unrelated to the next project, that doesn't mean you can't look through your old stuff and sort of grab something and maybe like expand on it or transform it or translate it somehow. If you also remember in the sketchbook video, which I will link over here as well, I mentioned about scribbling all over that first page so the book is not like this precious object and you can use it. That actually works really well on like a canvas or on an InDesign document or something. Just throw some stuff down and just start getting going. I really think that working with like limitations and prompts and things like that can be really helpful, and that will absolutely be another video. Those of you who know me know how much I'm into this film, The 5 Obstructions. Again, that will be another video, which when it exists will also be linked up here. But that idea of giving yourself a limitation or some sort of hard edge you have to kind of push off of, I think is really, really valuable. If you think about like an astronaut sort of in the void of space, they can't move. They can flail around as much as they want, but they can't get anywhere because there's nothing to push from. There's no friction. There's nothing to move off of. And I kind of feel like the blank page is the same way. So you can give yourself some sort of a weird limitation or restriction that'll give you something to sort of push from, and that can help a lot. You can also make sort of an obligation to either yourself or better off someone external, either a friend or maybe a colleague, or maybe even make like a deadline for yourself. Obviously, if you're working with clients, there's usually a deadline, but if you're working on your own creative practice, maybe you book a show for a while out that you have made nothing for yet. I have actually personally found that really helps me a lot to get moving, is when I know I've got this kind of obligation I need to hit. Another idea about making stuff is that you can actually have an idea after you make stuff. So we sort of think that the way this works is you get a prompt or a project or an assignment or something you want to kind of go forward with. You get a really solid idea and then you work. And that is a valid sort of logical way to do this. But it also can work the other way where you have no idea and you make stuff and then you get an idea afterwards. So you can go from both directions. Those are both equally valid ways of work. You don't have to walk into a project with like labels and definitions and parameters and knowing what this is and knowing what that is and kind of having it all laid out before you go. You can just sit down, grab some stuff and go and not worry about what it means or what the idea is or where you're heading with it. I really think you can kind of just like shut up in your head, like just stop kind of talking at yourself and just go and then figure out what it means later. I really think that we're sort of educated and we sort of logically understand the way the world works as you got to know what you're doing and then you do it. And that can actually be really stifling and really problematic, especially for me. I kind of like not knowing what I'm doing and then figuring out what I did later. You can basically just make stuff and kind of throw it on the wall and basically see what sticks. That's a very, very valid and very useful way of making work. Another idea is that we usually hear this term of quality over quantity. And I understand the logic of that, but I actually very much disagree when it comes to creative work. I think that quantity can lead to quality. I think that you have to sort of exhaust all of the predictable sort of pre-made ideas that you've seen before or that are kind of already in your head, the sort of stuff that's really easy. This is why I usually give students projects where they don't make one thing, they make like 100 things, because the first 30 or 40 are very predictable and very easy and kind of been there, done that. But then you start really hitting these places where you were not expecting to go. So I think that like making a lot of stuff, while the individual things might not be good, in fact, if you're really doing this well, a lot of them will be absolutely hideous, can lead to places that are far past where you would go if you just made one or two sort of iterations. The author Anne Lamott, she has this amazing book called Bird by Bird, which is all about writing. I will link that below. And she writes this idea of what she calls a shitty first draft, which is the idea where you just sort of vomit the words on the page and you don't care if they're good. Then you make it good later. And that really, when I was both writing the book and also when I make work, I really keep that in mind. Every master stroke you put down does not have to be amazing as you do it. You can get to it a little later. So this idea of just getting anything down, it will probably be garbage. That's actually a really valuable way to work. Instead of feeling like every move you make has to be amazing, you can just go. Just get it on the page, and then you can refine it and edit it later. And I've always said that making makes ideas, and so I really do believe that the more stuff you make, the more ideas you will get, which will give you more ideas to make. So you can just kind of go and let it be good later. Next thing you can do is you can sort of make work without judging it. The thing is that making stuff and evaluating stuff are two like completely different things. They're two different processes in your brain. And so I think it really helps to not try to do them at the same time. You should just get stuff on the page and then later you can evaluate it. And so if you're making work with the intention of everything you're doing being good, it's really not going to help. Similarly, if you're making work thinking, will this look good posted on social media, that can be really stifling. Again, you're evaluating it as you're making it. You're sort of letting your evaluation make choices. Now, at some point, you absolutely must evaluate the work. Not everything you do will be good. In fact, a great deal of it will be quite bad. but doing it at the same time are very different things. I believe it was Sister Corita Kent who said, make first and then evaluate later, because they're two different processes. And I think that is incredibly, incredibly valid and super, super true. You really want to make sure you're making work for you and you're getting it out, and later it can be for them. But if you're making it for them as you're doing it, that kind of doesn't make sense. And I don't mean client work. I'm talking about sort of recognition and things like that. You could even try to intentionally make really, really bad stuff. I've given a project in the past, which was make the worst thing you can possibly make. And it's a surprisingly interesting project. People end up doing some very interesting things. Again, not all of them are, quote, good, but they do get interesting and they get to places that are very unique and very unexpected, which is great. And lastly, this sounds kind of stupid, but you can just treat it like a job. Now, some of you are watching this going, dude, I have a job. I'm a designer. Like, I have clients. Of course, that's what I'm aware of that. But I mean like your creative practice. Like, you can treat it like a job. Every person I know who is a real artist, not a hobbyist, not a casual person, but like an actual artist, making art is work. It is not fun. It is not when the mood strikes them. It is not they feel a magical sense of inspiration and they go out. No. They go into the studio and make work because this is the time of day when they go into the studio and make work, and them feeling like it is completely irrelevant. And that is something that I am really struggling to get to, but I'm very slowly trying to get there. I think it's worth making an actual schedule for yourself where you know on whatever, Tuesday at 2 o'clock, you're in the studio. It doesn't matter if you feel like it or not. You're in the studio. Will you make stuff great that day? Maybe not. Maybe even probably not, but you're still there and you're doing it. So I think when you can treat it kind of like a job, give yourself a schedule, that can really help a lot. I really think that we overinflate this idea of inspired or getting in the mood or when it strikes. And I kind of understand that if this isn't something that you're necessarily like making a living on, or it's really what you're trying to do for your career, I can sort of maybe buy that. But I think if this is something that is really important to you and something that you want to do long term, the idea of like when you're ready is kind of not going to work. I think you should make a schedule and you should get in the studio and you should make it happen. I hope that helps. I will probably add on to this video with another follow-up video at some point because, like I said, I am figuring this out with all of you. I don't really know what I'm doing, but I am trying anyway. I hope this helps, and I will see you in the next video. Thank you.